In this attack, the suspect went for the woman's purse. Instead of just letting go, she fought for it. This resulted in her being dragged a little bit more and injured as more.
Japanese or Korean?
I'm Korean.
Yeah, you're Korean. Kim Jong-un's boyfriend. You're Kim Jong-un's boyfriend?
And while reporting these threats and crimes are very important, it is more important to take the necessary precautions to protect yourself from becoming a victim.
이 프로그램은 30년을 고객과 함께한 켈코 보험 제공입니다.
So I want to start today by asking the audience a question. Who here has experienced some sort of racism and or discrimination? Do you think it was because of your gender, maybe your identity, or your ethnicity, or even your race? I know I have, and I'm sure we all have at one point in our lives. I could stand here today and tell you stories after stories, but I remember in middle school taking the bus and being called a racial slur and being asked if I understood English or not. And the best, where are you from? And when I answer, I am from New York, they always ask, where are you really from? We all had similar stories growing up, or even worse. 안녕하세요. 제 이름은 존 킴입니다. 저는 FBI 샌디에고 지부에서 Assistant Special Agent in Charge로 근무하고 있습니다. As I mentioned, I grew up in New York City, one of the most diverse cities in the world, and still like many, faced anti-Asian bias and hate throughout my childhood. At that time, I think nobody knew any better. We just thought it was normal, and in Asian culture, we are taught not to speak up, especially to our elders or teachers, and to stay quiet and not get in trouble. And due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a large increase in hate crime. As an Asian American, it was very hard to see my fellow brothers and sisters be unfairly blamed as COVID continued to spread. However, when I saw all these organizations supporting the fight against anti-Asian racism, I was very proud to see everyone sticking together and raising their voices and awareness. I think that the older generations of Asians who immigrated to the United States were more concerned about being accepted as an American, but now our future and our generation should be about being heard as an American. Today I am here to discuss the topic of Asian hate crime, as this topic is personal to me and very important to our communities. Let's take a look.
Jose Gomez III was following around the family at the store because he thought they were, quote, from the country who started spreading that disease around. Jose Gomez eventually went after the father.
He just stuck my face with a knife.
Gomez also went after the two children, who were 2 and 6 at the time, slashing one of the children's face open.
As you just saw, this case resulted in a guilty plea, and the man, the perpetrator, was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The suspect admitted that after this attack, that he believed that this Asian family was Chinese, and then he blamed them for the COVID-19 pandemic, and further admitted that he wanted to kill that 6-year-old child who he slashed his face. The FBI was able to identify this individual targeted this Asian family, and even after he was subdued by the bystander, he shouted, "Get out of America." This is a huge success on all fronts and sends a message that we will not tolerate hate in any of our communities. This threat intimidation response guide breaks threats into 4 categories: an in-person threat, a phone threat, an electronic message threat, and cyber attacks. In-person threats are broken down even more into 2 different categories: physical and verbal. A physical in-person threat is when you are in imminent danger because the close proximity of the person making that threat. And in such circumstances, you have 3 options, and this is not in any order depending on the circumstance, but if you decide to run, you must identify an escape route. Drop any of your belongings and help others escape, and then as soon as you get out, call 911. If you decide to hide, you must hide out of sight of the threat. Lock the doors, block the entries, and silence your cell phones, including the vibration mode, and remain silent until the threat is over. And fighting should be your last resort. And if you do decide to fight, it's because your life is already in danger. Attempt to incapacitate the threat and act with much physical aggression as possible. Recently, there was a shooting in Monterey Park, And a 26-year-old man fought and disarmed the shooter, saving countless lives and preventing greater tragedy because he decided to fight. A verbal in-person threat is one that places the victim in immediate danger. So what should you do when somebody's giving you a verbal in-person threat? Write down the threat exactly as it was communicated. Record as many descriptive details as possible about the person who made the threat. Their name, if you know it, appearance, how did they look, their color of their clothes, what were they wearing, and any distinguishing features, and make sure you report the threat to law enforcement. A phone threat is a threat received by telephone. We're all familiar with voice phishing, right? Voice phishing can be a phone threat, and you should try to get as much information on the caller as possible unless you know you're in danger. Try to remain calm and do not hang up. Keep the caller on the phone as long as possible and try to get as much information to try to figure out if the threat is real or not. And if possible, ask others to come and listen and to also call law enforcement. An electronic message threat is a threat received through direct messaging, through email or social media, such as KakaoTalk or WhatsApp that we all use. And usually when people receive an electronic threat, it's because they want to blackmail you or make you do something that they don't want to do. And to protect yourself from that, do not open any attachments or messages from an unknown sender. If you don't know the person, don't open it. Do not communicate with them, and make sure your security settings are at the highest level of protection. A cyber attack can compromise your electronic device, such as your cell phone, your computer, and expose personal information, home address, pictures. And to protect yourself against a cyber attack, you have to use strong passwords. One of the things that a lot of people do, is to use the same password for same things, for your bank accounts, for your email, for everything. Do not do that, right? So please be careful and try to use different passwords and mix it up a little bit. And make sure you back up your data regularly. One of the two prolific cyber threats that the FBI sees is ransomware and business email compromise. And if you don't back up, you can be a victim of ransomware. So I have a few tips that I would like to share to help protect yourself. In the video that I'm about to show you, a car is driving through a group of protesters. This action could have easily injured or killed multiple people, but let's see what happens. As you just saw in that video, there was a woman who was holding up a sign and walking, right? And if she wasn't aware of her surroundings, right, she would have been hit by that car. But she was vigilant and paying attention, so she was able to kind of move out of the way and get not hit by that vehicle. That point is to say, pay attention to your surroundings. I think we all do it, right? When we're walking, we look at our cell phones and you look down and you're not paying attention. But if you're walking, put your phone away, keep your head up, look at what's happening around you, right? Who's walking by? Is anyone following you? Is there someone across the street watching you? And also, just because you're in a familiar area doesn't mean that you can let your guard down, because many crimes happen close to home. You should not be afraid to go outside of your house, but when you do, you must be aware. I remember when I first joined the FBI, every time I went home, I would pass my house just to see if somebody was following me. And I did, and it just became a habit at that time. I don't know who's following me. I don't know what kind of day I had. I would pass, and then they would, just to make sure. And when I'm with my family, I ask my wife to check to make sure that she looks as well too. So if I miss something or she misses something, that we're there for each other. Secondly, don't be predictable. This means don't be a victim of habit. Take a different route to work and leave at different times. Go to different stores. So you don't become a person of habit, right? So when somebody is trying to attack you or trying to identify who you are, they don't know what time you're leaving, they don't know what time you're going to work. Try to mix things up. Till this day, of course, depending on traffic, I try to take a different route to work and to come home. But traffic usually will get you here and there. But it's just something that's been ingrained in me by now. So my third tip is play the what if game. While walking, ask yourself, what if a car pulls right in front of you? Where will I go? What will I do? And if someone was yelling at you, are you gonna yell back or should I engage that person? This is something I do with my family. We always have a plan, and if something was to happen, we as a family know exactly what to do. Recently, 2 young Korean American students were at a restaurant when a white male began to harass them. The attacker was using homophobic and racial slurs. They were up against a verbal, in-person threat. Let's see how the victims reacted.
Wait, have you had a light well fry before?
What is a light will fry?
Okay, it's
You're just filming yourself eating?
Yeah.
You're a weird homosexual. Japanese or Korean?
I'm Korean.
Yeah, you're Korean. Kim Jong-un's boyfriend, huh? You're Kim Jong-un's boyfriend?
You know, we have been acquainted.
You've had gay sex with him?
Ooh, would not go that far. We're only on second base.
Kim Jong-un.
He hasn't taken me out to dinner yet.
Big scandals.
Can I take you out to dinner?
Come on, stop.
Nothing.
Stop.
I'm
You
sorry.
said
I'm
Elliot,
sorry.
stop.
I'm sorry,
You
my
said
bad.
what?
I didn't say anything.
You didn't say anything.
No, sir.
I
Nothing.
could spit in your face and it's a Filipino shit or something. Want some
Don't
Filipino
react,
shit?
don't react.
As we saw, the male student initially engaged the attacker, while the female student kept telling the male student to stop and ignore him. The female student was right. The male student should not have engaged. Even if he was only joking, he should have just walked away. Because the student kept responding, the attacker kept coming back with more to say. Eventually, after the two felt physically threatened by this person, they called 911 and the individual was actually arrested for California hate crime laws. Another huge success for our community. In this next video, I want to show you another situation that involves a different kind of engagement. Let's take a look. In this attack, the suspect went for the woman's purse. Instead of just letting go, she fought for it. This resulted in her being dragged a little bit more and injured as more. In this scenario, it is better to let the purse go. If that's what the attacker wants, let them have it. At the end of the day, your life is more important than a purse. So just let them take it if that's the case. My fourth tip is to be prepared. You must mentally prepare yourself to believe that you can protect yourself and your family. If you're mentally prepared, you can have the upper hand and will know exactly how to react if the situation arises. Prior to reporting to 샌디에고 and during the height of the pandemic, my family and I were in Jakarta, Indonesia. So it was really difficult for me to realize the severity of what was happening in the United States. I didn't fully realize the situation until I actually returned here during COVID, and that's when reality kicked in. I began to notice that people were actually avoiding us. I was walking down with my family on one side of the street, and when people saw us, they would cross to the other side of the street, and then pass us, and then they would cross right back. And I wasn't mentally prepared for this. But after that one incident, I knew I had to mentally prepare myself and not to overreact. Because if I started engaging those people, that would have caused more issues. And lastly, be aware of your internet presence. There's so much information about people on the internet. The internet has become a source of information for both good and bad. I have spent most of my FBI career handling cyber matters. And almost every time a group, a company, or person has become a victim, it's because they put too much information about themselves or their family on the internet. Please be careful of what you put out there, especially on your job, your current whereabouts, and your family. I can't tell you how many times we hear about someone who posted that they were on vacation and when they came home, their house was broken into. If you find yourself a victim of hate or any crime, please report. In law enforcement, we have a campaign of if you see something, say something. That holds true for everyone. In addition to reporting, we also need people like you to join our ranks and become a representative of our communities. There are so many positions available within the FBI, not only as a special agents, but there are hundreds of professional staff positions, linguists, analysts, surveillance techs, forensic experts. We are stronger as a whole, and I encourage you to speak up, to be heard. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.
이 프로그램은 30년을 고객과 함께한 켈코보험 제공이었습니다.